I think you have to hit the mute.
Did you get that alert on your phone?
Yeah, I actually have
Ready?
a video. There's a shootout.
We're still waiting.
Was actually shooting. So Jim went on the Waukesha scanner.
And
Yeah.
maybe it'll
He knew it wasn't
start
in Muskego,
at
but
some
some
point.
people thought it was actually Muskego.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay.
There's
Ready? Okay. I'm going to call the Plan Commission meeting to order. Tuesday, June 4th, 2019, at 6 o'clock p.m. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Drop? Here. Commissioner Pearden? Alderman Kubaki? Here. Mayor Shiverati?
Here.
Commissioner Jocks?
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster? Commissioner Bartlett?
here.
Planner Tresbiatowski?
Here.
So we have a quorum. Statement of public notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on Friday, May 31st.
Okay, and then we have consent business.
The minutes, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second?
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Now consent business.
Resolution 032-2019, approval of a metal accessory structure for Alan Hutchinson located at West 133, South 8109 Northview Drive. Resolution PC 033-2019, approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks at the Walmart property at West 159, South 6530 Moreland Road. Resolution PC 034-2019, approval of a certified survey map for the Will Rose Apartments LLC located at South 71, West 162-24 Janesville Road. Resolution PC 040-2019, approval of a metal accessory structure for Travis Johns located at West 145, South 9611 Groveway Lane.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the consent items? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda items are approved unanimously. New business for consideration, Resolution PC 35, 2019, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for CF Sports Aero LLC for auto sales and service located on Challenger Drive.
Move to approve.
Second?
Thank you. And Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. CF Sports Auto is currently a business that is located over across the street in our industrial park. They had an opportunity to move to a different space that was a little bit larger across the street from where they're currently located. So they are looking at going into that new space. They've already had our inspectors out there looking at what's needed to make the site usable for their proposed use. What they kind of did at their old facility and want to do here is they do some automobile body shop type work. They do detailing, they do vehicle wraps and detailing and stuff like that. The one reason that they're really here today is because they want to add auto sales to part of their use. So we do have a few users like this, kind of small auto dealerships that really do more so repair and detailing and stuff like that, but want to help just supplement their business by selling some vehicles. So anytime that there's a sale, especially if it involves outdoor parking of sales, they have to come through the Plan Commission. So you'll see there's a plan in front of you tonight. It shows that there's designated stalls for employees, customers, and sales stalls. But most of the operations are going to occur in the building. The only thing you'll see outside are the cars in the sales stalls. And they're regulated as far as what type of signage and stuff they can have, just like all of our auto dealerships have. And other than a dumpster at the back of the building, there would be no other outdoor storage. Everything else would be kept inside. So staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions in the resolution.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? PC 35 is approved unanimously. PC 36, 2019, conceptual plat for discussion of a mixed-use development for the area west and north of the intersection of Loomis Road and Champions Drive.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, and Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So what we have in front of us tonight is a conceptual discussion. There'll be no action taken on this. There's no resolution.
Did we have to make a motion for conceptual? I just realized that.
Actually, no, we don't, because there's no
No,
action taken.
so
I'll rescind.
Moved.
removed? Okay, thank you. Who seconded it?
Ben.
You did? Okay. We don't need a motion. It's just conceptual. There's no action to be taken tonight on this item.
So the petitioner Newman Companies is requesting conceptual discussion to get comments from the Plan Commission regarding a proposal that they're looking at, working on the southeastern corner of the city along Loomis Road. The area in question is an area that the Plan Commission and the council have seen over the past numerous years for different proposals. Most recently, the last proposal that was approved by the city was in October of 2007, so about 12 years ago. There was a proposal to change the percentage or the layout of multifamily and commercial uses. Historically, for at least 15, 20 years, this area has always been planned for commercial along Loomis and multifamily behind that business. That's nothing that's changed. But in 2007, the developer at that time, which it obviously didn't go forward, they wanted to change those boundaries. So those boundaries were modified from what existed previous to 2007, but it was still a mix of multifamily and commercial. The plan now is they're kind of relooking at the site, a new developer, and they're looking at reducing the amount of commercial and moving it to a more, what they believe a more practical spot, which would be the entry of the golf course, which is kind of shown on the bottom left side of the plan, and the area is labeled B floor on the drawing. And then the rest of the development, they're looking at having the zoning and land use changed to multifamily. Now, out of that multifamily, there's kind of 3 different types of units that are proposed. The first area that they're looking at is kind of the area that would be the furthest north and east, which would be closest to the Stonebridge subdivision and Champions Village subdivision. Those areas, they're proposing single-family condos, so there'd be standalone buildings, 1 family in each building, but they would be laid out in a condo format, would be common land and things like that. There would be proposed in that area a total of 39 single-family homes in the single-family condo area. And those would be spread out, and then it would give you about a density of about 1.9 homes per acre. Then the next part of the plan is showing duplex condominiums, which would be the left or western part of the plan. Those are kind of shown in orange on the map. Those duplex condominium would be proposed as potentially 13 buildings with a total of 26 units, so 2 units in each building. And that density is about 2.47 homes per acre. Both of those actually don't even need our high density designation. Those both fall within the medium density designation. But then when you go to the multifamily portion, if you look at the area, it would be just north or just above the commercial area, which is along, behind the commercial and along Loomis Road, close to the golf course entry. Those are the areas that they're labeling them as townhome rental residences. And there they're proposing 7 buildings with 100 units. And that gives a density of about 8.71 homes per acre. So, you know, you have the submittals in front of you. The developers here, if they want to add any kind of comments. And the purpose of this, like I said, there's no yes or no approval tonight. It's really for the Plan Commission to give the developer comments, suggestions, concerns, whatever it might be, so that they can decide how they want to proceed to go forward in this project.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions for starters?
My question is, what are you going to do with the traffic?
The only access point is I'm not sure what the road is, going into Muskego Lakes then?
Right, that's going to be a public road now.
It'd be a public
Yeah.
road. That's the only access to the entire property?
Yeah, and it's referenced in Adam's
Yeah,
memo about the
Yeah.
long cul-de-sacs.
You know, obviously, like I said, I'm going to take notes because they're all things that the developer then can look into. In general, Loomis is a state highway, so the State Department of Transportation has all and sole control over access. The city has no authority, the county has no authority. I know in previous discussions that we have notes in the file between the previous developers and the DOT. It sounded like they would not allow a full access point anywhere between here and east just because of their highway access restrictions. Being a state highway, the state's pretty strict on how they allow access restrictions. At the staff level in general, yeah, we agree there'd have to be something else for access. There's a lot of developments statewide that use emergency accesses, where you have like a one-lane paved road that might be gated, something similar we did for the new middle school, something that would be private for emergency only. But yeah, we agree at the staff level, there are some recommendations that whatever happens here, they need to figure out some way to get into those kind of further ends of the development, further east, even if it's on an emergency only basis. The city has, in the codes, suggested maximum cul-de-sac lengths, and their proposals definitely exceed some of those, so that's something that would have to be looked at if they went further. But part of it, they would be at the mercy of the DOT when it comes to access to Loomis.
I guess I'll pipe in with density, because you mentioned that in the memo. That's,
Yeah, so the multifamily, the current plan, which calls for high density says anything that's 2.9 units an acre or larger. And for commercial, there is no defined density. So I mean, the density could work here, especially if they're looking at a planned development district. We'd have to run some more numbers because we only have some really basic acreages. But when you look at the single family and the duplex alone, they're way under the density that they could be at. And then when you look at the apartment portion, they're above the density. So we'd have to look at more
Give and
exactly how they
take.
pan out, yeah.
So-
Because they would be doing this as a planned development, you'd be looking at, the whole concept, not just one portion over another.
So right now, if I'm reading that correctly, they're at 3.52 unit per acre, is that? I
Yeah,
believe
I
that's
think,
what's
let me
shown
double
on
check
here.
that.
So I don't know historically, if it isn't a high density, haven't we kind of kept it around 3 units per acre?
No, the lowest it should be at that is 2.9. It can go, we've had much higher.
Okay.
Maximum density is 8.71.
If they just look at the multifamily portion, so that's saying just the land mass that the apartments are in, and then dividing that by the 100 units. When you'd average the whole complex out, it's closer to 3 something, right? Yeah, that's, I think, what the number was.
Yeah, 3.52 is what they have on the documents.
And we must consider the average because it's one development.
Yeah, especially once they're asking for planned development zoning, that's specifically how the code talks about analyzing it, is not just a specific, it's looking at the comprehensive development. Technically, the planned development, even that, could allow them to use the commercial portion to figure density, but most people don't try to push it that much.
anything else?
Where those apartment or multifamily units are, is that driveway larger? I notice there's a loop going around the area to the back where the single-family condominiums are, and then running down more towards the east side of the property, and then coming back through the townhouse units. Is that area large enough in case we have emergency vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, the fire, city code for two-way travel is 24 feet. Fire department will sometimes, want that beefed up to 30 feet, depending on what's on the sides of it. But that could very, very easily be a 30-foot driveway, or maybe need to be somewhere between 24 and 30 feet. I mean, it can be made any size that they need to make it. It wouldn't be public, they're showing here the public being the main north-south road, which would basically be where the golf course drive is, and then the 2 main cul-de-sacs that service the duplex and the single-family condos, those would be the 2 areas that have public roads, and then the road going through the townhouse residences would be the private drive, which is very common for stuff like that.
Okay.
It's very rare to see public roads in an apartment development.
I just can't imagine 165 units, everybody going to work in the morning, trying to get out on one road. Wow.
It's an issue. We can't have you do that, please. Thank you. Yeah, I think we all share that concern.
And that's really before the B4 gets developed even. So we're basically, it's just going to be further increased traffic and we don't have a traffic study, haven't talked to the state or anything like that yet, right?
Yeah, that's something we'd encourage a developer to do. That's some of the suggestions we have in the write-up, and some of them are written in there, some of them we've talked about internally. Definitely talking to DOT, I think would be a huge suggestion to start, just to see what they're gonna require, what they might allow, what they might not allow. I know from some of the past documents I've seen, the DOT may not always have the authority to require a traffic analysis, but the Plan Commission or Council definitely could. And I think another big thing, and a lot of the residents obviously are here from the neighborhood, but neighborhood input, that's always something we recommend. The supplement, the write-up that staff did definitely recommends a specific, more intimate setting with the city removed, involving the developer and the neighbors if the developer wishes to try to hammer out any questions and concerns.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And on a positive note, I would just like to say the single-family condos is a very, for lack of other terms, popular, well-sought-after thing right now. Waukesha, City of Waukesha's had them in certain areas already. I happen to have family members building them in other parts of the country, so I know it's a very, very desirable thing. They want the home, they don't want to maintain the yard.
Yep.
Is there anything else?
How are common grounds designated in here? Is that the green, dark green spaces, or?
They're not specifically noted. I mean, condos usually are all grass areas common. They can be done differently.
Okay.
But that's most typical. Single-family condos, I know we're working with somebody on a different project that might be proposing something similar, but with a different type of layout where they actually have kind of what's called limited common elements. So basically have yards that are kind of limited to each unit, but usually it's pretty much common if it's grass, to the development usually. They can control that in their condo docs.
If they can resolve the traffic issues, I mean, Muskego Lakes has lots of weddings there over the weekends. I mean, the traffic's gonna be horrendous. That's
Yeah.
the biggest problem they have to solve, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Adam, do you think that's enough direction?
Yeah, I mean, is there anything, developer
Anything
team has to
specific
add?
you?
Thank you. I'm Brian Lindgren with Newman Developments, so appreciate the opportunity to discuss this parcel. I think what we really wanted to derive out of this conceptual discussion. Sorry,
Is it on?
I don't know.
Yeah, it should be. Just gotta get kind of close to it.
Okay. Again, I'm Brian. Hopefully that sounds coming through better with Newman Developments. And what I was saying is that really our intent here and what we hope to derive from this conceptual discussion is the vision that the city of Muskego has laid out for this area and how that conflicts with what the residents want. We're really trying to balance that with some sort of transition we know has to happen from a pretty pure residential use into the proposed multifamily and business districts that exist currently on the comprehensive plan and are already in place when it comes to zoning. So we're really open for a lot of different directions in this, but that's where we felt that the use of single-family condominiums transitioning through duplexes into townhome-style residences and business kind of led us that direction. We do feel that the amount of business that's currently in the comprehensive plan that runs the entire length of Loomis Road on this property is really not practical. It's a very difficult sell, especially with all of the business activity that's going on right now up the road, not all that far. The access points, as we've heard, and we need to discuss further, bringing traffic in and out of this area really doesn't lend itself well to a business use. As far as the residential components go, we haven't engaged, this is very conceptual, so we haven't engaged the highway department yet, but that is typically their stance, is they're pretty strict on regulating access in and out. Public safety is an important factor. We're not opposed to any, like an emergency access of some sort, whether that connects back to Loomis Road or if out of necessity it has to go somewhere else. We have not proposed a connection through to the existing roads in Stonebridge. That's not been made a requirement, but we have to discuss those things further. So on a conceptual level, I guess I'd like to at least propose the question here to the Plan Commission, if the vision set forward in the comprehensive plan calls for the multifamily and business. Is that still the vision that you see it today at the density levels that are currently proposed? And any feedback on connection to existing roads or requirements would be helpful.
I don't have any problems with the condominiums, with the townhouse or the single families. I've got more of an issue with the multifamily buildings. It's just a whole lot of people in a very small area. And that's the biggest problem I have with it.
That's the townhomes,
Yeah.
right? Please don't applaud. We understand how you feel, but please don't applaud.
I appreciate that feedback, but that is directly in conflict with the zoning that exists currently as the highest density multifamily zoning.
Well, maybe it's the number of units.
If we strictly went off of the zoning that's in place, we have, I think it was 23 developable acres. The zoning would allow for 200 units.
I understand that. But there's some logistic problems as well, putting that 165 homes with one road access. As far as going over to towards Champion Village with any roads, that's just that's a no.
You mean Stonebridge?
Or, yeah, Stonebridge or whatever they call that street.
I think that'd be a great question to take up on with the council and the plan commission eventually on what requirements the city would have for emergency access. I think that's where we're open to feedback.
And a lot of that's going to rely on what the DOT may or may not allow.
Sure. Well, I should be interested to see what the DOT has to say before we go much further, and also a good open communication with the neighbors.
Yeah, I guess I'd just support that. The single-family condominiums and the duplex condominiums are not really much of a controversy. I think that's something that's going to be very straightforward. When we get into the townhome rental, depending on how that's designed and put together, it can be very controversial. So we've had quite a few projects come through and had opposition here over the years. So I think that's something that we'll have to see as we go into it. And then I think a traffic study is going to be imperative, and connecting to some of the subdivisions here would not work very well at all. So.
Thank you.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I think if you do have a meeting with the residents, and you might find out a little more how they feel about certain pieces of it too.
Yes, I definitely appreciate that feedback. We had a chance to talk a little bit out in the hall before this. Obviously, that discussion needs to continue. Really, I guess, yeah, I mean, and if I can ask another question is, you know, there's a lot of business zoning in place here. Is that still the vision in the city of Muskego, that the amount of business acreage remain?
Well, I'll jump in. I'm comfortable with what you've proposed for business, because we all know that we're all shopping online. And that is changing. That's just changing the picture of the brick and mortar businesses. So I think it's reasonable that would be shrunk down.
We feel the same way.
Yeah, we're kind of nearing the end of a 2035 comprehensive plan, and we have to get to the mapping part of it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe not necessarily this area, but just Loomis as a whole is maybe scaled back, because I think it was a little aggressive up front. Even though it was noted it may never happen, the plan noted that right on it. Maybe it's better to not show it and give it the potential rather than show it, at least in some of the more rural areas.
My name's Steve DeClean. I'm also with Newman Developments. As we consider other, possible concepts for this site, it sounds like we're amenable to more of the duplex and the single-family condominium sort of mix on this site. Is the business, is it required on this site at all? I mean,
Well,
what's your?
it currently is, right?
Right, yeah, it's zoned and the comp plan calls for that. Would you support an amendment to those things to remove that altogether? And just scale down the density on this site from multifamily to
To all condos?
yeah, a combination of single families and duplexes, I think would be logical, given there's still Loomis Road, and this is removing we've been kind of struggling with the commercial aspects of this site. It's tough to know what to do with it.
It's probably more desirable to do that and to scale back the multifamily buildings,
Okay.
from my perspective.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think from I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for the DOT, obviously, but from a traffic standpoint, I'm hard pressed to look at the business plan and say it's a great opportunity, use it, because I don't think it is. So, yeah, I think it's worth considering.
Obviously, we are going to reach out to the DOT to see how they feel about a secondary emergency access point.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I think full access would always be preferred, but I think they've already said no to, that's where I would
Yeah.
start the conversation.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to find in the event they say no to an emergency connection. I mean, I don't know that we would make this land undevelopable according to the sort of set of rules right here.
Well, I think the question could come into play then is, does that then warrant a signalized intersection or something, which, don't get me wrong, that's obviously a big impact cost, which changes how it develops. So I don't think anything's undevelopable because of access. I think it's a question of how it's developed and what does that mean as far as improvements go. You know, the DOT could say, yeah, we're only allowing one access, but the only way to do that is you need signals or something. You know, who knows?
Okay.
Depends on the numbers, the traffic counts that they think might be there.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay, then I think we'll move on from this topic. Thank you. And then we have Resolution PC 37, 2019, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for Bass Bay Brew House on Ardmore Drive.
Move to approve.
Second.
Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So this approval tonight is for a building site and operation plan amendment for Bass Bay Brew House. They are looking at adding a patio feature on the lake side of the property. If you've been there, you'll know this area kind of right now is mostly grass, and there's some, tables and picnic tables and things kind of spread throughout the grass area. What they're looking at doing is making it now a more formal patio. So they're looking at it being about 45 feet by 80 feet in size. A portion of it will contain concrete, and another portion, would be crushed granite surface. This area in general would have outdoor seating, would have a fire pit and some kind of like bar type feature. They are then also showing that the south and west sides of it would be kind of surrounded by some retaining walls with some column type features. They are not proposing any type of covered feature or structure, and if they were to add that at some time, that would need a separate approval. As far as they do show some real basic landscaping, we definitely would want to, the site's really nicely landscaped now. We'd want to make sure that what they do here is enhanced with some landscaping. So as part of the permitting process, we'd want to see a landscape plan that would be installed as part of the install of the patio. They are not showing any newly proposed lighting or signage or anything like that. Any lighting out here of any type, whether it's for utility purpose or practical lighting or ambiance, would need approval, a separate approval from staff, as well as any signage. And that if they are going to do any kind of phasing of this, like only do part of it, not the other part, we'd want to have all that worked out before the permit would be issued. But otherwise, staff is recommending approval. We think this would be a really nice addition to this site and enhance their business as well as the community.
One question, is there anything to the west? Or
Not
north,
proposed.
northwest? I mean, residences or?
They're pretty far. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, if you,
All right. All right. It's only a question.
Aaron, you want to maybe go to the photo?
Okay.
You want to zoom in on that one a little? Well,
There-
yeah, if you look at the aerial
There's
photograph,
generally dining out there already,
yeah,
right?
this is
I've
definitely.
dined there.
This patio is facilitated more towards the east side of the property than the west. And the closest homes that are to the west, a couple of them have just like a long strip of land with the houses further back. So this really shouldn't have much of an impact. And like I said, yeah, there's already a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I think it'll be a very nice addition to the property.
Another nice addition. Okay, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved unanimously.
I abstain.
Oh, I forgot, yes, thank you. Resolution 38, 2019, approval of building site and operation man amendment for Soiree Serendipity located on Janesville Road.
Move to approve?
I'll second.
Thank you. And Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So Soiree, which is also, some of you may know as Serendipity Redesign, which is the front building. Soiree is the rear building on the site, is requesting a building site operation plan amendment for their wine bar located on Janesville Road, just a little bit west of Glen Cove Court. Soiree, as we mentioned, is located in the back building. The front building is Serendipity Redesign. And as a condition of approval for the business registration, which ties to the liquor license, when Soiree was originally approved, they were required to either add parking, because the site doesn't contain a lot of parking right now, or to secure a parking arrangement with the neighboring property. Either one of them could be an option on site. So for the past 2 years, the owners were able to work with different neighbors each year to go ahead and have parking arrangements. So this basically brings us to the beginning of year 3. So all of their current agreements, their current liquor license, their current business registration, basically state that by June 30th of 2019, they had to have on-site parking or have another agreement with surrounding parking. So as is noted in the proposal by the applicant, they are looking at adding quite a bit of parking, which would definitely help their business. They're showing that they could mark 3 stalls in front of the Soiree building, 2 stalls in front of the redesign building, and then they're showing the new parking lot in back, which would contain 12 stalls. So that would give this site a total of 17 parking stalls. They're showing that they'd be using an existing access that goes around the east side of the rear building, and they would keep all that existing paving where it is, and then off of that paving that's on the back, that's where they would expand their new parking lot. They are proposing the parking lot to have 10 foot by 20 foot stalls, which does meet the typical code requirement. And currently, they're noting the width of it being 20 feet. Now, one thing noted in the resolution is that the zoning code requires 24 feet for two-way travel. So the resolution is drafted that would have to increase to 24 feet. So it takes the total parking lot width from 60 to 64 feet. And the important part is making sure this parking is required to be at least 3 feet from the neighboring property line. That's also a zoning ordinance requirement. As far as the surface of the parking lot, now the applicant has stated that they would like this parking lot to be gravel. So anything that's existing paving would remain, anything new in the back there would be gravel. The zoning code, section 400 of the code, does talk about any driveways or off-street parking area other than for a residence should have capacity, that has capacity for 4 or more vehicles, should be hard surfaced or maintained in a reasonably dustless condition by dust-proofing applications if they're within 500 feet of a residential district. They are definitely within 500 feet of a residential district. The homes may be not that close or a little bit beyond that, but they are definitely within that distance of the district. So the applicant's request is gravel. Staff is recommending paving because of their distance from the residential districts in the code requirement, as well as their distance to the surrounding properties. The city of Muskego, and this recommendation is strictly based upon the code requirement, in that in at least the past 15 years, the city has not allowed a commercial site to have a gravel parking lot. It also kind of brings up the question of, if it is gravel, how is it marked? We require permanent markings for parking stalls. How does gravel get marked in a way that doesn't wear away regularly or often, or with rain or whatever it might be? So this is something that, staff really wants Planning Commission to discuss here. Like I said, historically, we haven't allowed it. The only times we typically will allow gravel parking are in industrial storage lots for non-employee, non-customer parking where it's completely screened from public view, meaning like fencing. So like if you have a storage lot for campers or something. But, we want the Planning Commission to have a discussion here. We want to make sure that, we can help this business be viable and work, but we also have to kind of do it within the constraints of what the code allows us. So I'm assuming there should probably be a discussion when I'm done talking here about where you guys want to go with that. Currently, the resolution is listed to be paved, as that is what typically the code would require. But the Plan Commission could either require it to be paved, allow it to be gravel, or do some kind of temporary gravel where maybe they allow it for a year or something. I know it's one thing that's kind of been talked about internally, is maybe that they could do something on a temporary basis. If there was something done on a temporary basis, staff would strongly encourage that that only be allowed through their next extension, which would be June 30th of 2020. At that time, and then I think we'd probably want to see it paved, but that's a discussion you guys can have. They are not showing curb and gutter in the parking lot. The rest of their site doesn't contain curb and gutter, so we typically won't require new parking to have curb and gutter, even though it's always recommended. But we would require, whether it's paved or not, to have parking stops at each stall to avoid people driving in their lawn. We've seen it happen on a lot of sites before. They don't talk anything about adding new bollards or new lighting, new signage. If they're gonna add any of those things, they need staff approval. If they do have any bollards, especially to protect the building as they go around it, they would have to be painted to match the building color. Any lighting would have to meet the city's lighting specs, whether it's mounted to a building, on a pole, freestanding. If they're gonna light the parking in any way, we would have to approve that to make sure it meets the city specs. Other than that, like I said, this is a condition of the business registration and liquor license specifically. The liquor license and the city attorney have said, if they don't have proper parking, they can't issue that license. So that's why this June 30th date is really crucial. The city then, by that June 30th date of this year would need to verify that whatever the approval is tonight, that is permitted, installed, and done per plan in order for us to let the city attorney know that they met their terms of the building site and operation plan and the business registration. So the resolution then states that if some reason something couldn't be installed per your approval tonight, by that June 30th date, that their liquor license and business registration would have to be put on hold until that could be completed. And that's per the city attorney that they said we couldn't issue
For just
that.
the soiree.
Yeah, for soiree specifically, yeah. But otherwise, staff is recommending approval. I have it drafted, and I think you probably want to talk about the parking lot surface.
Just to confirm, what you see in the picture is gray is all currently blacktop.
Correct, yeah, everything in front of both buildings, the driveway in front of the buildings, all that's currently blacktop, yep. And then even going around the back building up until like the back corner of it is also blacktop.
What is the?
What's to the right of
That's
it?
that actually doesn't still look like that. This photo is just a little older. That whole site next to them is a parking lot for the strip mall that's over there. And that was someone that they did have an agreement with for their first year of their lease. But due to some insurance reasons, they weren't allowed to renew it per their insurance company. And then their agreement this past year was with Keith Hammett, who owns the auto to the west. And same thing, he allowed it for 1 year, but after that, their insurance wouldn't allow him to renew it.
But it's currently parking lot.
Yes.
Yeah, to the
For the
east, it's
neighbor-
currently parking lot for a different business.
For a different business, okay.
I think you have to pave.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I just think you have to pave it.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why this wouldn't
Yeah.
be consistent with every other project that's been approved throughout the city over the entire time I've been on planning commission and prior to that, so pavement makes total sense. So for delineating parking stalls, and I'd almost take that one step further. I mean, there's some ADA and accessibility issues here that I don't even think are being addressed as far as it being a business, and I don't see that in the parking plan. That's required by federal law, so that would have to be delineated too, just from an operations standpoint. Not that we have to mandate that here from a zoning standpoint, but anyone that comes to your property could sue you literally for putting in a parking lot and not providing an ADA accessible stall. Just something you may or may not be aware of that you're exposed to, so.
Actually, I'm sorry, my name is Rick Hahn. I'm with Soiree and Serendipity. Actually, one of the 3 spots that would be in front of the building of Soiree would be designated for the handicap. That's our
Okay.
plan, just because of the.
Awesome. Just wanted to let you know.
The other aspect too, just to clarify, gravel, the newest technology that we're looking at is actually crushed granite. What we're coming across with a number of contractors is that because we're actually going into used land that's never been used for anything but, I guess, grass, if you will, there are concerns that because if we were to put in asphalt right away, it may shift in between, given our extreme weather, within the first year. What they recommend, actually every contract that has come through has recommended that we at least go through 1 season of winter or thaw, just so that it would adjust. That was our concern as well, just because it is kind of uneven, if you will, and especially since we are on a lower plane versus the next door, which is actually a little bit higher. The other aspect too, I guess I was confused on the there are two currently commercial businesses that actually do have gravel, so that's why I was confused, as that's used for parking, that doesn't require delineation, if you will, of spots. And they're both in residential areas as well, so that's why I was just curious. One being Pack and Brew off of Woods Road, as well as off of Lannon, there is Danny Haskell's. Their parking lot that is across the street that they utilize is also gravel, and actually was reinstalled last year, which is what kind of gave us these options of that, why we were looking at. So.
Yeah, and those were both originally approved way before the current codes were in play. I'm well aware of those.
That's what I just
And
tried to figure
they've
out.
actually both looked at paving, but because of stormwater requirements, prevent them from paving. And if they, you know, someone want to pave, just don't have room to handle the stormwater with it. If those were to come in new today for a brand new surface and they were grass, they would have to follow we'd be recommending the same thing.
I mean, our hope is to actually do pave it, but I'm concerned that the money that we put into it now would just be reused and have to redo it again in a year from now. And our contractors are prepared to offer their recommendation in writing, and or I don't know if an affidavit or whatever you want to call it, to attest to that, because that's our biggest concern right now, is that given the extreme weathers, and it's never been used for anything but grass and I guess trees, that whole area actually was filled with trees until the tornado came through. So a lot of that is still the trees that have been uprooted, et cetera. So that was our intent, was to install it, let it level, and it's like actually what they're being proposed is actually traffic bond-based material, which is kind of like the new hybrid that's still green, as opposed to asphalt, which will allow it to level, and then our plan is to actually asphalt it after. That was our intent.
Jeremy, do you have any experience from projects you've worked on with that?
I mean, yeah, normally they place place an asphalt parking lot in 2 lifts, and oftentimes the first year, they only place that first lift, or for the first 6 months, oftentimes it'll be that first lift, for that very reason, that it can settle out, and as cars drive on it, they can create a little indentation, basically, and then when they come back in to do that top coat, that's how they level it out, and pretty much it sets up. So.
Because we're looking at an 8-inch stale base initially.
Sure.
Of the crushed.
Yep, crushed stone.
Limestone,
Yep.
whatever. The newest thing is, we're trying to stay green as well, with given the changes of how much asphalt is utilized, if you will, so.
So that, what are they saying is the base coat that they're putting down on top of that 8 inches?
Oh, no, that would be just the crushed bond until it gets level. This is what, we called it gravel, for lack of a better term, but it's actually 227 tons of traffic bond-based material to provide an 8-inch stable base, fine grade to the area, and provide a smooth surface with drainage, and then compact. And then that's when the intent is to utilize them for the asphalt within a year.
So the traffic bond's the real fine stuff?
Correct.
If I'm not
The
correct.
gravel,
Yep.
it's just
That
basically.
packs down.
Gravel
Correct, and it
base.
actually provides, as the more usage, it gets better and better to avoid the leveling.
I mean, I guess it's, from a planning commission standpoint, I mean, that's a discussion, I guess, as to whether or not we would want to give them time to put that down and set it, but
Well, they do multiple lifts in
they do, they have to.
heavy roadways.
Yeah, you do. On a parking lot, you're gonna do it in 2 lifts. Normally, they put down that first lift, and that's what they let you drive on, and, yeah, it gets some indentations, especially where the heavy traffic is. Although you have pretty light traffic here, if we had UPS trucks and various things, you'll typically see a lot more wear and tear on it. But yeah, normally they'll put down that first base coat, and then they'll come back in so many months and put the top coat on. That's just kind of the normal process.
So it would normally be gravel, then the first layer of asphalt, then they let it sit,
Yep.
and then do the second?
Yeah, yep, that's normally what I see. I mean, you guys had, this city's a good example of that.
Oh, that's exactly it. You
Yeah.
put a base down, you put TB down to tighten it up, but asphalt, the ultimate objective here is to be consistent, and it needs to be asphalt. No, how we get there from here, I think I'm not sure that I'm qualified to say, but I think it needs to be asphalt ultimately.
I mean, I don't know that I would have an issue with giving it the 1 year for the asphalt, but I agree it has to be asphalt, because we can't go against our code.
Right.
The only thought that goes through my mind, and that's just from an operations standpoint, you're leasing the property, or do you own it?
We actually own it.
Oh, you do own it? Okay, okay. Then that alleviates that concern, so, all right.
I don't have an issue with waiting the year that we put down something now. But I agree, it does need to be asphalt to stay consistent. But do something now and finish it before June 30th of
2020.
So the
2020
so the traffic bond needs to be down
by June 30th.
by
Right.
June 30th.
Yeah, and then ideally, I mean,
Well-
we're kind of waiting.
Yeah, your biggest delay would be you'll need permits, land disturbance and zoning, and we can make those go quick, knowing that you have a time crunch, but
And we actually
That's
have
gonna be
a
the biggest
number
thing,
of
yeah.
contractors lined up. We were just really just waiting to see what was transpired.
So I would be entertaining a motion for the traffic bond to be installed by the 30th of June and, or at least the permit, is that what you're saying, Adam?
no, I mean, per the liquor license, that to be installed.
Okay, and it's installed, and then the following year, by June 30th, the asphalt needs to be in place. Is there a motion for that?
Make the motion. I just have a question about that. It's
And then we need a
June-
second to it before you do
Yeah,
that.
to the
second.
amendment.
Okay.
It's June and it's Wisconsin. Okay, so we can make the permits go fast, but
the
if they can't get out there because of the rain, then what happens?
Well, I think per attorney, he can't issue that liquor license till they meet those requirements.
If
That's
we were to
what
have-
I've heard, but maybe I'm wrong.
Just a quick question too. Initially, when we did the first year, we obtained incremental parking from another, not necessarily, I believe it was not defined as neighbor or anything. It was just additional parking relatively close that we utilized. If we were to get, let's say, for example, we weren't able to get the travel bond given the weather, but we're able to get additional parking for another month, or for a temporary, would we still be able to get the liquor license?
That will be up to the city attorney. I think it would depend on what kind of proximity is it
Sure.
that people realistically be able to use it and go there.
Yeah.
I would leave that up to our attorneys.
I mean, we can discuss that. But I just want to make sure that we've also thought about
Yeah,
the
it
weather as
wasn't-
well. Trust me, that's been a concern quite from some time.
Nothing
so.
specifically says it has to be an immediate adjacent neighbor. It was
Okay.
just something that's close enough to be practical that your patrons, because we've had, and this isn't any fault of yours, but we've had issues with these other people next door that once their agreements ended, people still parking there,
Right.
and they've gotten in trouble from their own insurance companies. So that's one thing the resolution states, is we just want to make sure that you guys can drill into whoever your patrons are, where they can and can't park, because it's getting other people in trouble with their insurance companies.
Yep.
We've had quite a few complaints about that, but like I said, I don't fault you on that. Customers are gonna park where they're gonna park, but letting them know to, hey, if you're gonna be our patron, here's where you gotta park.
Yeah, and we've been
That's the
communicating, I
biggest
mean,
thing.
as we explained to the police department when they came through, we've heard the evidences of what we've done, and they're like, other than actually driving their car away
Sure.
from them, they understand, so.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay?
So then,
we have
make
that
an
motion.
amendment, correct? And then what we can do is we'll strike then anything that references it being paved now and change that reference to June 30th of 2020, and that it can be traffic bond at this time till that date. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, any discussion on that?
or sooner.
So you made the,
I made the
motion,
motion.
I'll second?
It's been seconded.
Oh, I didn't
No,
hear
it's
that.
already second.
Okay, excellent, okay, excellent.
But thanks anyhow.
Then I'll third it.
So that is the amendment, so any more discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Aye. Opposed? The amendment is approved. Assuming no other discussion, please cast your, or now, all those, I'm sorry, I'm used to a machine, and then we don't have it at every meeting, so, all those in favor of the resolution as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Where is that machine? Are we not getting it?
Council use that.
Okay, resolution
Causes more headaches sometimes.
39, 2019, approval of a certified survey map and building site and operation plan for a Dollar Tree located on Janesville Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, let's pull up my notes. So yeah, as you heard, we have proposed a Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree is being proposed next, immediately west and adjacent to Kohl's Department Store along Moreland in Janesville. The applicant has talked to us a little bit over the past. Definitely looking at adding a store to this city. They do their demographics. They definitely feel that there's a market for this type of store in this type of area, given the type of demographics that are here. So they have worked with the developer to figure out how they lay out the lot. They've worked with the developer to kind of figure out how access and easements and everything are going to be put in. For those of you that may or may not remember or may or may not know, originally this whole area west of Coles was supposed to have been a Jewel Osco when Jewel Osco was still relevant. And Coles was actually an afterthought after Jewel was first proposed. At that time, though, is when Jewel kind of rethought their whole strategy and moved out of the entire state. So the Jewel never got built. Coles still went in. And then since that time, the only other thing that happened in this kind of green area next to Coles then was the Aurora Medical Facility. So this is now the second or next user that's in line there. So we worked with the developer, really made them aware of the design guides, especially that Moreland Quarter South Design Guide. You know, when you're doing some of these big buildings, it's hard to make a perfect Prairie or Craftsman style building. But, you know, they definitely wanted to try to pull some features, stretch some horizontals. They tried to carry through some of the features, like some of the hip roof features that are found on all the kind of general buildings in this area. So from an architectural standpoint, you know, I definitely think this is the best Dollar Tree that I've seen. We actually do quite a bit of research when we talk with new buildings to try to look at architectural research to see what other designs they may have that might be good for our area, or if they don't have any, you know, help guide them towards our design guides to get a building that fits the design guides of the area. So I think this was really a good effort. Their plans, you know, changed, you know, and kind of evolved over time. I think this will be a nice quality building in that area. You know, it's next door to Kohl's. Kohl's is probably the worst example of the architecture that we need, but being so big and being the first user here, I think the city at that time was happy to have the user, and that was a little more of an afterthought. So I think this is a good transition. You know, it starts to carry some of those features, but also starts to have a little more traditional features that we expect to see in the neighborhood. One question with these buildings is always what happens on the sides of them, just because there very well could be another user right next to this at some point. And so they are mirroring the same thing that Aurora did on their side, where they're doing a more basic block, but they're having some banding, so it doesn't look too boring, yet knowing that there's going to be a future expansion of some other user probably someday off that side. So I think the solution they propose there is a pretty good fit for that neighborhood. All of their loading and stuff will occur in the back of the property, which is the same that happens at the Kohl's facility, so that nothing's really different there. They're adding a little more paving on the back of the property to get to their loading dock. They will have a transformer and dumpster enclosure. Those are all behind the building, so once again, you won't see them. They are adding a little bit of parking, and I think that's just because the other parking that's existing is legally identified as Kohl's parking, even though I'm sure any user can use whatever there, I would assume. They are adding some parking, and in the parking area that they're adding whatever kind of curb bump outs or parking islands or whatever it might be to keep the existing pattern that's there. So as the rest of this develops, we keep that symmetry that's already been established. So that's something that their engineering staff has worked on. As part of this, there is a certified survey map, because they do have to split their lot from the other lots. Because this is a planned development, they don't follow the typical requirements of like road frontage and things like that. They're allowed 0 lot line setbacks. This is the exact same kind of layout that Aurora had to do with their CSM. So it's very typical for these types of planned developments. But overall, you know, staff is definitely recommending approval. There are a few minor contingencies in the resolution, but we think this could be a nice addition to that area. You know, anything like this always helps boost traffic counts, which is good for other future potential users that rely on those traffic counts if they want to be a tenant here. So staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. Miscellaneous business?
Nothing there.
None? I have nothing.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.